Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Brian and Drew. Good to have you guys on this Easter weekend. Hope all is well. Or wait a minute. I hope that you're not having any issues accepting life as it is right now. That's really more, that sounds, that doesn't sound like the way that you would welcome or greet someone, but that really is closer to the truth, isn't it? The benefit I want to talk about today from buddyc.org is the resources page that we have. It's listed as recovery resources. There's a lot of things here, 30 tools to stay sober. We compiled, this is not my list, but this is a list compiled by the members of the Fourth Dimensioners, the nightly 9 p.m. Eastern meeting. You can get there at zoomaameetings.com. And they, some of these things I wouldn't be on my list, but it spoke to them. So I just left them on the list. I don't have to approve everything. Yeah. So I just let it be. If it spoke to them, maybe it'll speak to you. Then there's the transitions emails. There's podcast directories. There's a sober meditation app. There's that actually I published back during the pandemic, which is free. Online meeting resources. A link to a Google group. Link to a Google Drive that has a lot of different resources on it, a lot of stories, and just a lot of different things there. Reading materials, shared calendars, one calendar for a daily thought and another for A Course in Miracles. All these things are there under buddyc.org recovery-resources. buddyc.org/recovery-resources. Check that out. Maybe it'll be beneficial to you or a sponsee. Isn't that the reason we're here, is to be helpful? This is just another way that we can provide some help from our experience. Last week, I mentioned that we wanted to start sharing every week one of those situations that unfolded before us, those synchronicity moments. People call them different things, God moments. If I use the word God, don't automatically think that my God's the same as your God. And I've learned to give folks freedom to use that word very liberally. So don't attach anything to that, please. I call it God moments. And so I just have a list, and whenever they happen and I'm of mind to do it, I will add them to the list. I use Google Keep for all of my notes, and I have a category for that. And I put the date and what happened and explain it out. Usually you can't explain those in one sentence, because you have to set them up, and it has to do with other things. And I have one today from an ex-sponsor of mine. Now, he was prone to exaggerate at times, but he wouldn't just make a story up, okay? The reason I know is because he's told stories that I was involved in that the story was real, but he embellished a little. But this story is so out there that he just couldn't have made this up. It's just too much. He's not that creative. Okay, let me set it up for you. Him and his wife were going to town. It was a Saturday morning. Town's, probably 30,000 now. So he's going to the west side of town. Him and his wife in different vehicles. They had different errands to run, different places to go. So he was going to the gym, and then he said, it looks like I can get into Ingles pretty easy at the moment. So he shot over and got into Ingles, and they have a gas station at Ingles there. So he went up and filled up with gas and then went on inside, to buy what he needed to buy. And when he went to check out in Ingles, he didn't have his credit card. And he said, "Oh, I left my credit card in the machine at the gas pump." So he went back over to the gas pump. His card wasn't there. He said, "Well, I'll just have to deal with that when I get home." So he went and did all of his errands around that morning. And he got back home. And when he got back home, he went over to the dining room table, and there was his card. And he asked his wife about it. She said, "Well, I was running around town and I needed some gas. You know what's coming." So I went to Ingles, and when I went to put my credit card in, I couldn't. There was already a card in there. Now, this is a busy Saturday morning. And she said, "I went and pulled the card out and it was yours." So I just brought it home. I thought, wow, why is that important? I just don't understand it. You can call BS on those types of stories, but that one is so unbelievable. I think it's very much true. When we learn to live, and he didn't get upset about it. He said, "Well, we'll deal with it when I get home." And so that's what he did. He didn't stress over it, and it was taken care of for him. It doesn't always happen that way, but I think it would have been a lesser story if he would have stressed the whole time, been calling the credit card company, had already canceled the card, all these things, and stressed about it the whole time he was out. He didn't do any of that. And I know that he doesn't live that way, because he was a lot of help to me on finances of just letting those things go. So that's how he lives. Maybe him not putting all that pressure on it allowed it to happen. I don't know. I don't know how those things work, but I'm grateful when I hear of them. Brian?
I had a short little story that was really came to mind. So Monday mornings I go to an early AM meeting, and I usually get there at 6, 5:45, and I go by Starbucks before, and I pulled up there at the drive-thru, and I could see a guy sitting in there, and he reminded me of a friend of mine, Sean, that I hadn't seen in probably 8 years, not in recovery anymore. Or as far as I know, I haven't seen him or talked to him. And I thought, man, that looks like Sean. I said, wouldn't that be something if he showed up at the meeting? And so I'm there in the drive-thru, and I leave and go to the meeting, get it set up. And all of a sudden, here comes Sean walking up. And I thought, man, isn't that something? And so I meet him at the door, and I said, man, I just saw you at Starbucks, because he was carrying a coffee. And he says, I wasn't at Starbucks. And I said, he's like, I went to Dunkin'. And it was just the weirdest thing, because I told him, I said, man, I could have swore that I saw you, and that I haven't seen this guy in like 8 years, and he's coming back into recovery. So it was just one of those. I don't know where that thought come to mind, but it was good, and I was glad to see him. But it's just that reminder there's things working behind the scenes that we don't know about.
Thank you, Brian. That's been one of my main affirmations now, is a desire to fully live in this flow that it's like a river. It has banks, it has a course that it's going, and more fully being able to stay in the current of that flow all the time.
And not fight against it.
Not fight against it, and not desire to leave. Because that's a lot of what my fear does, is wants to sit still. That's another way my fear comes at this. Not just fighting it, but kind of sitting on the sidelines, get the lawn chair out, watch it go by. This is a situation where that's not good. Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Brian. Okay, let's get to our reading today. The Fasting of the Heart, page 50. It begins on page 50. It's 4 pages long. In the Thomas Merton interpretation of Chuang Tzu's writings, I tell you, what I realize when we're looking at these, you can probably fast forward to the last 10, 15 minutes of the podcast and get what we feel it's actually about, because we just are in all directions in the beginning, just, looking at it and uh, filling the story out and listening for an applicable interpretation. We don't come into this knowing what we think it could mean. And just because we come to one uh, determination of what it seems to mean to us doesn't mean that other interpretations aren't, just as valid. Like looking at a piece of art from a different angle. If you're looking at a different angle, you're going to see something different, like a statue of some kind. You're going to see something different if you're on one side versus the other side, more than likely, or front and back. You're talking about the same work of art, but what you see may be totally different. So this is not something that used to, I'd say, it doesn't mean that. It means this. No. Can it mean both? Sure it can. Okay, I'm just going to read a paragraph, I think, at a time, if it makes a complete thought. If not, I'll read into the next one, and just go as we go, and if we don't get through, we'll take it up from here next week. Yen, the favorite disciple of Confucius, came to take leave of his master. "Where are you going?" asked Confucius. "I am going to Wei." "And what for?" "I have heard that the Prince of Wei is a lusty, full-blooded fella and is entirely self-willed. He takes no care of his people and refuses to see any fault in himself. He pays no attention to the fact that his subjects are dying right and left. Corpses lie all over the country like hay in a field. The people are desperate. But I have heard you, master, say that one should leave the state that is well governed and go to that which is in disorder. At the door of the physician, there are plenty of sick people. I want to take this opportunity and put it into practice, what I have learned from you, and see if I can bring some improvement in conditions there." Okay, we have a disciple of Confucius. He wants to go to a far country that he's heard that the prince of that country, or that province probably, doesn't take care of his people, refuses to see any fault in himself. The people are getting desperate, and he had this valuable gift that he wanted to, the way he says is, "I want to take this opportunity to put into practice what I've learned from you and see if I can bring about some improvement in conditions there." So he's going to help. I don't know yet if that's a good thing or not. That's just what he's saying. And I wonder if with Confucius, a lot of times Chuang Tzu makes fun of Confucius. So I don't know if that's going to show up in this story either. Because it's a total different way of thought between Confucius and Lao Tzu and Chuang Tzu, those guys. "Alas," said Confucius, "you do not realize what you're doing. You will bring disaster upon yourself. Tao has no need of your eagerness, and you will only waste your energy in your misguided efforts. Wasting your energy, you will become confused and then anxious. Once anxious, you will no longer be able to help yourself. The sages of old first sought Tao in themselves, then looked to see if there was anything in others that corresponded with Tao as they knew it. But if you do not have Tao yourself, what business have you spending your time in vain efforts to bring corrupt politicians into the right path? However, I suppose you must have some basis for your hope of success. How do you propose to go about it?" Confucius here mentions a downward spiral. First, he's going to bring disaster upon himself if he does this. And he's describing someone who had not cultivated the Tao within them. So first he says he'll bring disaster. And this is a really interesting sentence here. Tao has no need of your eagerness, and you will only waste your energy in your misguided efforts. There's a difference between, we talk about a lot about being helpful. How can I be helpful in this moment? That is much different from how can I change you? That's not that. Brian, can you see you can see the difference between the two?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. When I read that line, Tao has no need for your eagerness and you will only waste your energy in misguided efforts, I thought this person's a black belt Al-Anon. I mean, to me, seriousness, to me, this kind of sounds like attraction and not promotion.
Yes.
And in recovery, like you don't, like I've said before, I've had some friends that have not really, their struggles don't seem too bad and they stick around, and then others that it's, have had really, really serious consequences and they don't stick around. And it's just like, you just don't, there's nothing that I can do.
It also goes back to that. If you're thinking AA lingo, that we're responsible for the hand of AA to be there, not to go get them out of, to sober them, go get them sober, but when they reach out.
For that door to always be open.
Yes.
That reminds me, it's been years ago, I showed up at a meeting and it was just me and my sponsor, and the group would go to lunch afterwards, and I made a comment to him. I said, "Hey, do you want to just head out and we could just go to lunch?" And he said, "No, I feel like we need to stay here and keep the door open because you don't never know who might show up." And nobody showed up, but that really made me think.
Yeah, Brian, it's a responsibility statement.
Yeah.
I am responsible when anyone anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA always to be there, and for that, I am responsible. When others reach out, we've had, it happens to everyone eventually that's in the program. A relative, friend, somebody contacts you. Can you get whoever sober? Well, do they want to get sober? Well, they need to.
They need to. Yeah.
Tell them to call me and I'll be happy to talk. Well, will you call them? I said, no, they need to reach out. That's how this works. And you get different responses, but if I go and try to change someone, I really am wasting my energy. Yeah.
Potentially harming yourself.
Yes, exactly like Confucius was talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You will bring disaster upon yourself. Okay. Check out this spiral. Okay. In our eagerness, we waste our energy. We just talked about that. And if we waste our energy, we become confused. And then after we become confused, we become anxious. And then once we're anxious, we will no longer be able to help ourselves. Man, isn't that the way it works? I get anxious and all serenity leaves, all acceptance leaves. And it really starts with, this is good. All of that starts with my misguided efforts to change something I can't change. Man, that's
damn it, back to that again.
It all comes back to acceptance, Brian. Every bit of it does.
Yeah.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I
cannot change.
The courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That really is the spiral, though. When I start trying to change things I can't, be it in other people and situations or in me, I get confused, then I get anxious. Of course, I'm wasting my energy the whole time because I'm trying to change something I can't. And then I'm to a point that I can't even help myself.
Mhm.
This is, he says, the sages of old first sought Tao in themselves, then looked to see if there was anything in others that corresponded Tao as they knew it. Okay, so the sages did not try to fix people, did not try to change people. They cultivated the Tao in themselves, and their interaction with others was to see if there was anything in them that corresponded with the Tao as they knew it. That attraction again. Yeah, that attraction again. Okay, so he explains this to him. Yin has this explained to him by Confucius. But and he says, if you do not have Tao yourself, so he's saying he doesn't think Yin, his disciple, uh, has the Tao himself, is not to a point spiritually um, that he should be thinking of taking on some effort of this type. I don't know if we'll find out if he thinks he should ever take on an effort of this type. He says that what business have you spending your time in vain efforts to bring corrupt politicians into the right path? See, he's trying to change them, bring the corrupt politicians in the right path. However, I suppose you must have some basis of your hope of success. How do you propose to go about it? So he's asking, Confucius is asking Yin, okay, I think you're going to waste your time, but how are you planning on doing this? And Yin replied, I intend to present myself as a humble, disinterested man, seeking only to do what is right and nothing else. A completely simple and honest approach. Will this win his confidence? Sounds good. Certainly not, Confucius replied. Not no, hell no. This man is convinced that he alone is right. He may pretend outwardly to take an interest in an objective standard of justice, but do not be deceived by his expression, talking about the politician that he wants to change. He may look like he's interested, but he thinks he's got it figured out, that he alone is right. He is not accustomed to being opposed by anyone. His way is to reassure himself that he is right by trampling on other people. If he does this with mediocre men, he will all the more certainly do it to one who presents a threat by claiming to be a man of high qualities. He will cling stubbornly to his own way. He may pretend to be interested in your talk about what is objectively right, but interiorly he will not hear you, and there will be no change whatsoever. You will get nowhere with this. That's pretty self-explanatory. Yin
Buddy,
said,
I was going to say this word intend, where it says Yin replied, I intend. To me, that says that he's going in there with a plan.
yeah, yeah.
And he's not just showing up and just being different. It's a it's promotion.
It is. I didn't catch that. Thank you, Brian. I intend to present myself. He's not being a disinterested man. He's not being humble. He's just pretending he is. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. It's a facade that he's putting on.
That's it.
That's good. Thank you. Yin said in response to Confucius saying, okay, this first idea you have, no, it's not going to do anything. Certainly not. Yin said, very well, instead of directly opposing him, I will maintain another plan, right? I will maintain my own standards interiorly, but outwardly I will appear to yield. I will appeal to the authority of tradition and to the examples of the past. He who is interiorly uncompromising is a son of heaven just as much as any ruler. I will not rely on any teaching of my own and will consequently have no concern about whether I am approved or not. I will eventually be recognized as perfectly disinterested and sincere. They will all come to appreciate my candor, and thus I will be an instrument of heaven in the midst. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go in and pretend now, I'm changing my pretending that I'm interested and that I'm obeying on the outside, but I'm not on the inside. And then he goes on to explain this. In this way, yielding is obedience to the prince. He's taken the principles that Confucius had taught him and he's manipulating them in this. Yielding in obedience to the prince, as other men do, bowing, kneeling, prostrating myself as a servant should, I shall be accepted without blame. Then others will have confidence in me, and gradually they will make use of me, seeing that I desire only to make myself useful and to work for the good of all. But he's still scheming. He's still conniving. Thus, I will be an instrument of men. Meanwhile, all I have to say will be expressed in terms of ancient tradition. I will be working with the sacred tradition of the ancient sages, though what I say may be objectively a condemnation of the prince's conduct. It will not be I who say it, but the tradition itself. In this way, I will be perfectly honest and yet not give offense. Thus, I will be an instrument of tradition. Do you think I have the right approach? So what he's going to do instead of presenting his opinion, he's going to let their teachings present his opinion. I've never known that to work. That comes a lot in church. I see that a lot in religious circles. And I've never seen someone change because you quoted them why they're doing it wrong. That change has to come from within. But to each his own. Certainly not, Confucius said. No, this ain't going to work either. You have too many different plans of action when you have not even got to know the prince and observed his character. Here we go. First, he's saying you need to know the prince. You don't even know it. At best, you might get away with it and save your skin, but you will not change anything whatever. He might perhaps superficially conform to your words, but there will be no real change of heart. When I'm working with a new sponsee, one of the first questions I ask is, how do they connect spiritually? What practices do they have? And we talk about this on an ongoing basis. What practices are you doing? What's speaking to you spiritually? And whatever approach they take, that's the approach I take with them. If they're a Christian, I can I can use Bible to teach, not teach, to explain the steps along with the big book. I try not to offend anyone's idea of the higher power. It was difficult for me at first not to express mine, but I'm learning not to do that. It's always better when I don't. I've lost actually a couple of sponsees over time, I think 3, because as my idea of the higher power evolved, we would discuss it and it was different from theirs. And they just weren't comfortable with me being their sponsor anymore. They just faded away and got somebody else. So I'm learning not to do that, but I can share it in a way that speaks to them. I have to get to know them. So if there's someone that I think that I want to influence, if I were to do that, the first thing I would need to do is seek to understand rather than be understood, like the St. Francis prayer talks about. Yin said, "Well, that's the best I have to offer. Will you, master, tell me what you suggest?" So he's had two different approaches. Confucius, which is his master, says, "You ain't even got to know the prince yet. And with the way you're going about this, there'll be no real change of heart," which is what Yin is after. Yin appears to have all good motives here too. So he said, "Okay, master, what do you suggest?" And Confucius says, "You must fast. Do you know what I mean by fasting? It is not easy, but easy ways do not come from God." "Oh," said Yin, "I'm used to fasting. At home, we were poor. We went for months without wine or meat. That's fasting, is it not?" "Well, you can call it observing a fast if you like," said Confucius, "but it is not the fasting of the heart." "Hmm. Tell me," said Yin, "what is fasting of the heart?" Confucius replied, "The goal of fasting is inner unity. This means hearing, but not with the ear, hearing, but not with the understanding, hearing with the spirit, with your whole being. The hearing that is only in the ears is one thing, the hearing of the understanding is another, but the hearing of the spirit is not limited to any one faculty, to the ear or to the mind. Hence, it demands the emptiness of all the faculties. When the faculties are empty, then the whole being listens. There is then a direct grasp of what is right there before you that can never be heard with the ear or understood with the mind. Fasting of the heart empties the faculties, frees you from limitation and from preoccupation. Fasting of the heart begets unity and freedom. Doesn't sound like freedom, does it? But it is. "I see," Yin said Yin. "What was standing in my way was my own self-awareness. If I can begin this fasting of the heart, self-awareness will vanish. Then I'll be free from limitation and preoccupation. Is that what you mean?" "Yes," said Confucius, "that's it. If you can do this, you will be able to go among men in their world without upsetting them. You will not enter into conflict with their ideal image of themselves. If they will listen, sing them a song. If not, keep silent. Don't try to break down their door. Don't try out new medicines on them. Just be there among them, because there is nothing else for you to be but one of them. Then you may have success." I'm going to go ahead and finish this. "It's not easy to stand still and leave no trace, but it is hard to walk without touching the ground. If you follow human methods, you can get away with deception. In the way of the Tao, no deception is possible. You know that one can fly with wings. You have not yet learned about flying without wings. You're familiar with the wisdom of those who know, but you have not yet learned the wisdom of those who know not. Look at this window. It is nothing but a hole in the wall, but because of it, the whole room is full of light. So when the faculties are empty, the heart is full of light. Being full of light, it becomes an influence by which others are secretly transformed." So Chuang Tzu was not making fun of Confucius. Confucius had some wisdom to share. So he's talking about emptiness,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
not only hearing with the ear or mental understanding or what you see, even, what you see with the eye. It's about that intuitive knowing, that intuitive listening, that intuitive understanding. And he goes on to explain that. I like what he says at the top of 53. There's then a direct grasp of what is right there before you that can never be heard with the ear or understood with the mind. And that is so true that we call it awareness, that the answer is right there and we're not able to see it. We're not awake to it. Drew, you have something?
What this brought to my mind was experiences in the past I've had when um, I've spent time around people who I can tell pretty quickly have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol or something else, and I don't try to change them in any way. I don't try to, talk with them about, how they might want to change or appeal to their senses of, tradition or morality or whatever. Try to be something I'm not. But instead, I just live my life the best way I can. They've noticed that I live a satisfying, sober life, and they get interested in that. So they reach out to me. They tell me, hey, I've thought about drinking less, but I haven't actually done anything about it because of this and this and this. Kind of talk to you about it. So I feel like the story kind of resonates with that experience in my life of, if you want to change somebody else's behavior, just showing them how you live your life, being a positive influence without without doing it for the sake of affecting others, without that self-awareness. That's the quickest way that you can show somebody that another way to live is possible. So that's what the story reminded me of.
Thanks, Drew. It says you'll be free from limitation. If you can do this, and this is kind of the promise of the story, you will be able to go among men. This is what Confucius is saying. This is the plan. This is what you should do. Be able to go among men in their world without upsetting them. At this point, I can go out. If I'm doing a business thing, a lot of times there's something where you got to go, not as much now, but occasionally go entertain, buy drinks, do all those things. I've learned just to sit and talk, and I don't have to make a big deal out of not drinking. I think half of the U.S. doesn't drink at all. So I don't have to make a big deal out of it. I just don't drink, and I can just leave it right there. I don't have to do some funny thing about it or some, if I want to, I can, but I don't have to do any of that. I'll be among them and have good conversation, at least until I hear the third story at a higher elevation. Then, then I try to get out of there. Really try it the second time I hear it. But if I'm entertaining, sometimes I have to hang out. I can even make that, I can even be helpful in that situation. I don't have to fight it. You will not enter into conflict with their ideal image of themselves. If they will listen, sing a song. If not, just keep silent. You're not trying to change someone. It's attraction, like you said, Brian. Don't try to break down their door. It means that figuratively. And that's with anything. That goes back to that getting anxious, the whole spiral.
Mm-hmm.
Because I keep trying to change things I can't, influence things I can't influence. And don't try out new medicines on them. In other words, don't try new strategies.
Yeah.
Because when you do, you're still trying to change, change them. Just be there among them, because there's nothing else for you to be but one of them. That reminds me of situations where we are drawn together with family, maybe with the sickness or death of a loved one, drawn together with family that we maybe ex-outlaws that you're around because you have children together. A grandmother dies that you haven't seen in years and years, but it's important to, your child. So you're there in those situations. can I just be there among them? And it says there's nothing else for you to be but one of them. In other words, there's nothing for you to change. Just be there.
Just meet them where they are.
How can I be helpful? How can I show them love? How can I, all those things we talk about. Now, he gives this example about leaving no trace and walking without touching the ground. What I think he's talking about there is living life without deception, without conniving, without sneaking, without agenda. That's leaving a trace. It's not walking and no one be able to see where you walk physically. It's about doing that on a spiritual level. And he says that's possible. And then he talks about flying without wings, the wisdom of those who do not know. That intuitiveness is, I believe, what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gives the example of the window, the small window letting light in the entire room. We can do the same thing when we're empty of self. When we're empty of self, light can illuminate the whole room of our heart. I think is what he's saying there. And he's saying being full of light, us being full of light, it becomes an influence by which others are secretly transformed. So this happens organically, and they're changed by the light itself, not by your excessive effort to change them. Yeah. It's a place of wu-wei. It's a place of effortless effort in that there's no deceptive effort. There's no effort with agenda. That's the kind of effort that we're talking about. I enjoyed that. I'm surprised we got all the way through it.
Yeah. We got some traction right out of the gate.
We did, didn't we?
Right off.
I'm glad we didn't skip this one. We talked about it.
Yeah.
Didn't.
Yeah. That was a good one.
Anything else to add to it?
I think it just speaks to our level of enlightenment. I mean, little joke there.
Do what?
I said, I think this just speaks to our level of enlightenment. Just understanding this right off the bat.
Yeah.
But no, when I saw this was 4 pages, I thought, wow, this is going to be a lot, but it was a good discussion. Thank you.
It's so important that for me that I work these steps and continue to work 10, 11, 12, because that's what empties me. And it's basically, it's the fear that I'm full of when I'm full of self. The self is fear for me. And it's seen as all of these defects of character that we talk about. It's fear, and then for me, it's either selfishness, dishonesty, or resentment. And that we see as all the different things outwardly. We see our anger, we see our manipulations, we see our pride, and all of that's part of ego. And that's how we see those 3 things. But for me, that's kind of how it develops out. And the steps address that. So when I address this fear and I choose love over fear, what am I doing? I'm cleaning out the heart. And the more open the heart is, the more intuitive I can live.
The more I'm able to listen.
Yes.
And keep my mouth shut.
Yes. Is there anything else before we close? All right. Well, you guys have a great day and hope to see you next week. Thank you. Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.